It's Thursday, April 16th, 2020. So more hocus pocus on Wall Street today. Dow Jones closes up in the green, 33 points. And what's really fascinating as I make this video on this beautiful breezy evening in Palm Desert, California, Dow futures are up 730 points, while 1 in 7 US workers is now jobless. You know, when I woke up this morning, the first thing I did was try to find the jobless numbers. And I turned on CNBC, couldn't find anything. Turned on Fox Business, nothing. And then I had to scour the internet, finally got the numbers. As most of you know, the jobless numbers were horrific this morning. 5.24 million people filed for unemployment benefits in the last week. I predicted yesterday it would be around 4 million, 4.25 million, so I was a million off. So it was worse than I expected it to be. And while I sit here and make this video, Dow futures are up 730 points, while 22 million people right here in the US have gone jobless in just the past 4 weeks. Think about what this means for housing sales, auto sales, retail sales, you name it. It means things are going to get very ugly here with the US economy while the stock market continues to go up, while the Fed continues to buy everything, while the Fed injects billions in the repo market, buys bonds, buys ETFs, creates massive amounts of debt. The stock market's going to continue to go up. But it looks like, I think we're coming to a point where people are beginning to lose faith in the stock market. They're losing faith in the system. They don't put as much concern in the stock market anymore because they see it for what it is, fake. What they're putting their concern in is their own economic well-being, their own economic futures. Can they buy a house today? Can they buy a house this year? Are they going to have a job 6 weeks from now or 6 months from now? Can they sell their house? Are they going to be able to put food on the table? There's so much uncertainty with the future, and America is starting to wake up to that, and they're beginning to get very, very worried. Many people aren't thinking about big screen TVs anymore. They're thinking about what's going to happen when the food runs out, what's going to happen when the stimulus checks run out. Things are going to get very, very ugly here, and as things continue to get uglier, it's the wealthy, it's the big corporate America, it's the big corporations, it's the banks, it's the airlines, it's the casinos that are getting the help, not small business, not the poor, not the middle class. Very interesting article here today. It's titled, "Over 43,000 US millionaires will get stimulus, averaging $1.6 million each." And in the article, it says at least 43,000 millionaires who are too rich to get stimulus checks are getting a much bigger boost. The CARES Act, which we hear so much about on how it's going to help families and small businesses, well, it seems to benefit the wealthy much more than the small business, than the middle class, than the poor. It allows pass-through businesses, ones taxed under individual incomes rather than corporate, an unlimited amount of deductions against their non-business income, such as capital gains. They can also use losses to avoid paying taxes. 43,000 individual tax filers who make at least $1 million a year are going to get a savings of $70.3 billion. That equals $1.6 million each, all while the guy who has the sandwich shop or the pizza shop, the small retailer, they can't even get a phone call back to get a loan. They're done. Unbelievable what's happening here in America. Zero hedge today. U.S. retail sales crashed by most ever in March, despite all the stockpiling. So while people are going out buying toilet paper, buying food, buying God knows what, because of what's happening, people went into emergency status, into emergency mode, and so while they were all out running to Walmart and Costco, retail sales still crashed. Home builder sentiment collapses as mortgage purchase apps plunge to lowest in 5 years. This is the real economy. This is what's really happening. Housing starts collapse by most in 36 years, also on Zero Hedge today. They're down 8.3% month over month, the biggest drop since 1984. Building permits also plunged. They were down 6.8% month over month. Now remember, some new guidelines, some new rules here with buying a house. You need at least a 700 FICO with 20% down. So think about an average home around, let's just say $300,000. 60,000 down with a 700 FICO or better with 20% down. So that's $60,000. How many people have $60,000 to put down on a house right now? They didn't have it before this whole situation started, before this whole collapse started. So how many now are going to have $60,000 and a 700 FICO to buy a $300,000 house? Ask yourself, do you think the consumer is in better shape now today than they were 4 or 5 weeks ago? Absolutely not. And it's going to get worse. Okay, it is going to get worse. This stimulus is only going to help so much, but it's on borrowed time. And at some point, you got to pay the piper. There is no such thing as a free lunch. The stimulus is going to run out at some point. And when it does, people aren't going to have a job to turn to. They're going to have no way to support themselves, no way to buy a car, no way to buy a house. And it's going to be very, very hard for the average person to put food on the table. Zero Hedge today. Frontier agrees on debt restructuring, files for bankruptcy. So again, you look at a company like Frontier taking on massive amounts of debt. Another thing we're going to see is people are going to start canceling their cable, right? They're going to start cutting things out. And so Frontier, more trouble. Here's another one. JCPenney buys a 30-day breathing space but risks default by delaying $12 million payment. JCPenney's is $4 billion in debt. Their stock today was trading at 24 cents a share. They're done. JCPenney needs to pay $12 million on one of its debts today, which it couldn't do, according to its SEC filings. June will see $105 million in bond repayments come due. It's not going to happen. They have a 30-day grace period to pay the $12 million. They will be declaring Chapter 11. And you got to think about how this is going to affect the malls across America. When we look at JCPenney's, also Neiman Marcus filing for bankruptcy. These are giant anchor stores. Neiman Marcus, JCPenney's, anchor stores that attract people into those malls, which help the smaller stores in those malls. Westfield Mall by my house here, it's on borrowed time. Probably at least 20% of the stores in that mall were vacant before this collapse. Now Sears closed in February. That anchor store is gone. Our JCPenney's will close probably within 12 months, 18 months, gone. The entire mall is going to be gone at that point. There's going to be so many vacancies. And when these big anchor stores go, it just decimates all the smaller stores. And again, this didn't just happen in the last couple weeks. You look at JCPenney's, it's been ongoing for years. Neiman Marcus, a couple bad years. And really, the retail apocalypse has been going on for a couple years now. And, the bubble's been pricked. And we're going to see huge devastation in the malls, the shopping plazas, all of this on borrowed time. CNBC today, Small Business Rescue Loan Program hits $349 billion limit and is now out of money. They are unable to accept any more applications. So if your small business didn't get money, it looks bad. It looks really bad. CNBC today also, employers aren't rushing to let you tap your 401k amid the crisis. The recently passed CARES Act included provisions to make it easier to access your retirement money penalty-free. It's up to employers whether to implement the legislative changes. At last count, fewer than half are doing so. Remember, if you don't hold it, you do not own it. If you leave your job, remember, if you take money out of that 401k and you leave your job, it's got to be paid back immediately. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. It really makes you wonder, is it really your money to begin with when you can't access it when you're going to be penalized, when you're going to be taxed. If you leave your job, it's got to be paid back immediately or you will be penalized. U.S. Mint halts all production over fears as gold and silver coin demand nears record highs. So the mint closed down when it ran out of silver. Now it's closing down because of the infection. While this massive demand is taking place, now we have a shortage. So you know, if you didn't acquire gold and silver last year or 6 months ago, the premiums now are skyrocketing. First they ran out. Now, for safety reasons, they're halting production. Interesting number here. The mint sold 56,500 1-ounce gold eagles in the first 2 weeks of April alone. And you just look at how they try to knock down the price of gold. They try to knock down the price of silver. It's a daily struggle. But we now see people paying $25 or $30 for a silver eagle because they understand the importance, and they understand that this whole system is on borrowed time. The US dollar on borrowed time. Many of the banks here in the US on borrowed time. Life as we know it is on borrowed time. And I cannot stress enough, this is why I make these videos on a daily basis, to reinforce my beliefs with your beliefs. Most of you know and have known something is very wrong with the US economy, the US financial institutions, the US markets. Everything is fake. Everything has been manipulated. We don't even know the real value of assets today because the Fed is buying everything, buying bonds, buying treasuries, buying stocks, massive repo injections. Now they're buying US corporations. They're buying people. They're buying your freedom by making you a debt slave. Think about that. All this stimulus money, who's paying for it? We're going to pay for it one way or another. So while they give you something over here, they're taking it out through the back end. They're destroying the US dollar. Hyperinflation is coming to America. Again, nothing is free, ladies and gentlemen. There's a price to pay when you take something when you think it's free. Nothing is free. And people are going to give up a lot of their freedom because of this. They're going to become debt slaves. They're going to lose purchasing power with their currency, with the US dollar, because there's a price to pay. Nothing is free. People are becoming more and more dependent on the government to take care of them. You know, we're losing our ingenuity. We're losing manufacturing. We're losing our drive. We're losing our freedom, innovation, being able to think for ourselves. Every time we take money from the government, we're paying a detrimental price. And, you know, when I see the Dow Jones up right now, while 22 million people just lost their jobs in the last 4 weeks, when we see what's happening in housing now, what's happening in auto and retail, yet the stock market goes up, that should be a warning sign to every one of us that we're being lied to, that this is all propaganda, that you need to own assets. You need to be getting your debts paid off immediately. You need to be a free-thinking, independent human being. The less dependent you are on the system, the more free you are, and the better chance you have to survive what is coming. Complacency is no doubt coming. People are going to feel like everything's okay. They're going to get their stimulus check. They're going to get their unemployment with their additional $600, and they figure they'll be back to work in a month or two. The question you have to ask yourself is, what if that doesn't work out? What if you don't have a job to go back to? What are these people going to do? What happens when the stimulus money runs out? It's not going to go on forever. It's going to run out. And what we know now is that a lot of these jobs that once existed 4 weeks ago, they're not going to exist in the near future. And people have no idea what is coming to America. Their standard of living is being robbed right now while they sit at home drinking beer, thinking that everything is going to be okay because the government and the banking system is going to take care of them. That the government and the financial institutions have their best interest at heart. While small business is being wiped out, while the middle class is being gutted, while your pensions are being robbed, while your Social Security is being robbed, people just stand by and believe that everything is going to be okay. I know that 98% of you watching this video are too smart to buy that bunk. You know what's coming. I almost feel like this is the calm before the storm right now. You know, watching the president come out with his task force today, give a good speech, read off the teleprompter. Just, you know, we keep hearing that the economy is going to go back and be bigger and better than ever. Well, here's a news flash. The economy was failing before this collapse. And the economy is not going to go back to some booming economy. This economy was on life support well before we ran into this collapse, this situation that we're dealing with right now, this speed bump. It was falling apart well over a year ago, propped up since 2008. Ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a huge price to pay. Life as we know it in America is going to change. And we have choices to make. Are we going to be victimized by it, or are we going to be victorious? And I'm going to do everything I can by, you know, making sure my debts are paid down, to making sure that I have as many preparations as possible, making sure I have as much gold and silver as I can acquire, making sure I have cash put away. I'm going to do everything I can do in my power to prepare for this economic tsunami, one unlike the world has ever seen. It is going to wreck people. And again, we can be victims or we can be victorious. Many people are going to be squashed like worms by what's coming while they stand by and believe everything is going to be okay. Take this time, become your own asset, prepare the best that you can, continue to wake up as many people as you can. I know most people aren't going to listen, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people out there right now very, very scared because of the uncertainty. Many people are waking up and realizing that they've been hoodwinked, bamboozled. And as they try to bring this stock market back, ask yourself, what does that really mean for you if you don't have a job, if you don't have a decent wage, if you're losing your house, if you can't put food on the table? Who cares about the stock market? What matters is what's happening in the local economies, what's happening to your futures, what's happening to your wealth as it's being decimated right before your very eyes. Again, your Social Security, your pensions, your 401ks, all being wiped out. Because you got to pay for big corporation bailouts, you got to pay for the millionaires to make sure that they get bailed out. Look, these bailouts and stimulus, they're helping the millionaires and big corporations, not small business, not you, not me. And I'm not here to sit here and place blame. The house is burning down right now. There is no time to place blame who started the fire. We got to get out of the house and get as much as we can and all of our loved ones out of the house before it collapses on top of our head and we burn alive. We got to get out. There'll be time to point fingers after all this is done. But right now, it is about survival. You need to be in survival mode. You need to be acquiring assets. You need to be making yourself a better asset. You need to be making yourself less of a victim and more of an asset. So continue to do what you're doing. We'll just follow things as they progress. We're going to be, sold the same propaganda now that the economy is going to be roaring back. Look, we didn't have a roaring economy to roar back to. Remember that. That's a fact. You can look at all the numbers, all the statistics, what was happening in auto sales, what was happening in retail, what was happening in shipping. Just look at the debt. How can a country that is over $24 trillion in debt talk about a roaring, booming economy? We're broke. And many of the households here in America are broke. And until we admit that and face the facts, we're going to continue to go even deeper into debt than we already are. So I'm going to leave it right there today. I want to leave you with this though. For the people out there who believe that their 401k is going to save them from what's coming, they're in big trouble.